To me, EUfolio is a facility that allows students and teachers to interact between each other in terms of work done in class, homework, feedback that's actually given to the students later on, maybe that night or the next day, work that can then be scrolled up on screen in class and commented on, and further work then done as a result of that in a really fun and interesting way.
Well, certainly for myself, I think it's the sense of ownership that the students themselves got, that they got to, they could claim the learning for themselves, and they can take control for their own learning, not just relying upon the person at the top of the room.
But I suppose we'd been thinking for a while about new ways of getting kids involved and just, I suppose, trying to give them a different perspective on learning English in particular, but not just English. And this seemed like an ideal kind of fusion of technology and methodology from an English point of view.
I enjoyed with the EU portfolios is that how it was easier for us kids because we're always immersed in technology, and it was easier for us to use, and it's more like visual because you can import pictures off the internet and apply them to your work, while when you're writing you can't. So yeah, it was a lot easier and funner.
When we were using the portfolio, I enjoyed the fact that it was on the internet and it wasn't just plain old boring school with books and pen and paper. You were using computers and you were typing out your ideas and you could share them with other people, and I thought it was easier to use than actually writing them down, because I can type quicker than I can write.
So use the portfolios was very creative, was probably the main thing I found with it. It gave them the time to go home and open up that space for their learning. So I was just amazed with the creativity that there was. So typically in class, it's a very set amount of time, you can only get so much done, but when I left a task on OneNote, I just left it open to the class, they were just very, very creative. Plus they could go in and look at other tasks.
I think it made them very reflective with their work, because they knew that there was a possibility of sharing it with the class, or like that, having it projected, where we could point out various aspects of good work or work that could be improved on. So I think it made them definitely more reflective of what they were writing and how they were writing it, how they were presenting.
Absolutely.
What I think would be the most advantageous of it from the students' point of view is that the students got to showcase their own skills outside of the ordinary format.
I think as well, maybe you saw students in a different light. They were more helpful. I suppose the dynamic of a classroom is maybe a little bit more chalk and talk, whereas this allowed them a little bit more role of a teacher rather than just learner. They were a little bit more active in the classroom.
And a big sense of reflection as well, because even when the students are choosing different forms of media to import into their OneDrive, a lot of them changed their mind, or they scrapped an idea, they picked another one. So all of that is so important, and it's so positive because it's them analysing their own work, judging their own choices and deciding which one to stick with and which not, which is learning at its finest, really. So prepares them, I think, for the 21st century.
Well, I think in terms of my teaching, I collaborated more with Orla, and we actually devised between us various plans in various areas that we wanted to get the students to focus on and do homework on and so on. So from that point of view, it was absolutely brilliant.
From the teacher's point of view, we probably collaborated more, or it's caused us to collaborate more than when you're teaching, you close out your classroom door and off you go on your own. But this has caused us to kind of come together a little bit more.
Which is brilliant.
And I found that I would reply more instantly to them rather than taking up like that a bundle of copies, because you tend to reply, and then they would reply back with a thanks miss or a smiley face, or, something like that. So there was that kind of personal rapport, I suppose, even though it's through the digital hub or the digital age, but it was much more personal in many ways. Yeah.
And that was something I hadn't anticipated, that would actually be a very positive side effect.
Using OneNote allowed me to use different types of formative assessments. So I was using highlighters on OneNote, picking out features of quality that way. The audio feedback was great. Using the desktop version, I was able to click into work and just leave audio feedback. That was really, really efficient as a teacher.
Getting feedback on the EUfolio was different because the teacher could leave audio feedback,
and I'd go back to that, and he was able to give more detailed feedback on my work, so it was more helpful than just writing a comment on my copy.
Everything is in one folder, in the students' folder, all of their work, you know, which is excellent for them because they can see the progress as well. That they don't realise how hugely they progress from year to year, and when they can look back at, well, that's what I did in first year, and here I am in third year, and look at the difference, you know, and I worked on certain aspects, and here I am now. You know, they can have that kind of reflection as well, which has to be beneficial.
Yeah, well, see, what she does is when we're on all our e-portfolios, she drags it up on the big board, and we can all see each other's e-portfolio page. So she kind of comments on it, and you can listen to her comments instead of her having to write it down, which I think is a lot more effective because you can listen and she can kind of say it in her own words instead of trying to have it down on paper.
When you share work, then you get a different opinion on your work, and it's like a board to bounce ideas off. And you get ideas, or if someone shares their work with you, you might see it from a different perspective and be able to help them. And when you share work, then everyone's work becomes better.
Well, sharing our work with other students you see, there were some boundaries because we could go into other people's work, but we weren't allowed to copy and paste it. So it wasn't like stealing, but we'd read up on what the people would say, and we'd learn from them, and it wasn't shut off from one another. We knew what our strengths and weaknesses were in English.
That it wasn't that the technology became secondary to the whole thing. That teaching and learning is still about ideas, and then the technology can be used as a method, and it's no more than that. Because I think at the heart of the Folio project is kids doing it for themselves. And if I had to sum it up in a word, that's it. It's kids coming up with ideas.